like Nicholas Kristof, you know.
All right.
I mean, I won't attack him personally. I'll just attack his information.
Let's do that. And what we need is to have a room with like 500 people in it, and get the word out, and ethical culture. Yeah, something that's wheelchair accessible. Like you can't. But anyway, let's do that and get some people out there, get some media coverage, and put some pressure on Democracy Now! And Pacifica to get this out there. So please, everybody, leave your name, your email address, and phone number if you can, and we'll work on this and get it done, and maybe raise a little money for Keith at the event for his movie.
Thank you. Thanks, Sheila.
And your computer.
I would definitely like a computer.
Hey, I want to ask you, I understand the history of US because it's such a big empire, you know, what's the role in Africa, and Belgium, because Belgium has the colonial history, but can you talk about a little bit about Israel, since how can they expand their financially, you know, their interest behind the Middle East and their massacres there, how can they go all the way to Africa?
Well, Israel was definitely built on the diamonds out of Congo, and if you don't believe that, look at the book Glitter and Greed. There's plenty of books out there that talk about the diamond growth in Israel and how it was built out of blood diamonds, basically. So your question is, I'm sorry, I just made that statement and I forgot. What was your question? Israel's connection to Africa. Israel's got very deep connection to the Congo at this moment, but also Angola. There's a guy named, what's that diamond guy that was protested in New York? Not so, what? Lev Leviev, yeah. He was protested here in New York. Same thing could be done again and against Maurice Templespan, but the big problem right now is this guy Dan Gertler. Gertler's sunk his teeth into all these other interests, and he's promoting, he's combating other corporations. Israel's combating American corporations on some level, and that's provoking fighting on the ground under Lake Albert, for example. Gertler has recently gotten into the oil. But the diamonds and Gertler's companies tie into Moshe Schnitzer and Shmuel Schnitzer, the two people who founded the Diamond Bourse in Tel Aviv. And so it goes very, very deep into Israel's connections there. And we're talking about guys that, you know, regularly spend time with the power structure in Israel, the prime minister, and I can't remember the names, but in the article that I wrote about Dan Gertler, just search on Dan Gertler and Keith Harmon Snow, and you'll find this article which lays out all these details about Gertler's connection to these powerful guys in Israel, and his connections to establishing his power base in diamonds first in the Congo, and how he did that, and its connections to the arms rackets, etc., etc. But Israel's ties go very, very deep. They supported Idi Amin coming to power. They supported the overthrow of Rwanda through this guy, David Kimchi, and other Mossad agents. Mossad had connections to, for example, Burkina Faso is the Mossad base of operations in Africa. Burkina Faso is diamonds. We're talking about why Thomas Sankara. By the way, I mentioned Gandhi, but I would quote Thomas Sankara, but I don't think anybody knows him. How many people knows Thomas Sankara? Well, that's pretty good. All the African guys or African American guys know him. That's anyway, Thomas, or Asian Americans, sure. Sorry, I don't mean to offend anyone. Anybody who understands liberation. No, it's just not known who Thomas Sankara was. But anyway, Israel's base of operation and control has been Burkina Faso, which means diamonds in Sierra Leone, diamonds in Angola, diamonds in Congo. Now Rwanda is serving Israel very directly. Sudan and Darfur have very deep ties to the Israeli situation. Well, the Israeli situation in Darfur is quite deep. Israel wants the uranium in Darfur. I mentioned that oil concession, but I didn't even get to the image that I wanted to show you about Coca-Cola, because I mentioned Coca-Cola. But I got to mention this because it's important. Darfur is about Coke, because Coke gets gum arabic, and Unilever gets gum arabic from Darfur, the best gum arabic in the world, and it's used for, and it's the most gum arabic produced in the world out of Darfur. Gum arabic. It's used to bind Coca-Cola together. It's used to bind ice cream together and bind food products together. Don't eat Ben & Jerry's ice cream. Anyway, Yeah, they were. They started small, but anybody who starts small and gets big sells out, and that's what they did to Unilever. And they don't care anymore, but that's not fair. Anyway, the question is, Israel's ties all over Africa. I did a 3-part series with Press TV out of London, where they had this panel of people come in, and 2 of them were Israeli. One was an Israeli official, one was a middle-of-the-road kind of guy, and then there was me who did it by video. And I challenged them about Israel's interests in Africa, and this guy from Israel was just denying everything left and right. So I have that series, and people should watch it because I get deeply into the connections because I researched it before going on TV, you know, in London. No, it's not available there, but if my website were finished and I could afford to finish it, I could put it up there, but that's the problem. Anyway, so Israel's connections are very deep and unappreciated. You know.
Can you hear me?
Israel's sending weapons into the Congo, for example, left and right. Israel's sending in UAVs, unmanned aerospace vehicles. They're one of the biggest markets for UAVs in the world. They're being produced out of Israel. Sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. It's all appreciated. Paul Kagame is everywhere. Like New African Magazine, international conferences. It's like the white people and this like Rwanda mafia that's running around Geneva. They have him painted like he's some sort of black Moses or something. And like recently they had the elections in Rwanda, and then there was some information about how the opposition was being treated out there. And then a lot of people said that that information had become public because Paul Kagame was saying some pro-Chinese influence in Africa stuff. But I, for some reason, have a feeling that that's not quite the story. It's kind of like how you look at how they made Lee Harvey Oswald look red and how people get like sheep dipped. I was just wondering if, like, from your, you know, saying from what you know, if you think I might be on the right track with that.
China's issue of China, you know, how many people know that the Dalai Lama was supported by the CIA?
Yeah.
Pretty good crowd. Anybody who doesn't know that, it's a piece of information you might want to understand when you look into Buddhism. I'm sorry. Om Mani Padme Hum. The point is, the United States and China have been at war. You know, it's red China. It's still red China. It's biggest growing economy on the planet. China's definitely backing Paul Kagame at this point. But it's a what do you call it? A positive feedback loop. The more things that Paul Kagame does that oppress people in Rwanda that get leaked out, because so many people have learned what's happened in Rwanda. Obviously, so many people have no idea. But that it's harder and harder to cover up for Paul Kagame's atrocities, especially when, for example, this report is released that's claiming that Rwanda committed genocide possibly in the Congo. So as the U.S. starts to say to itself, well, we got to get rid of this guy Kagame, he's fucking up our show in Rwanda, meaning AFRICOM's all over Rwanda, and we don't want the world to figure out what that's about. We don't want the world to see that Andrew Young from Atlanta has just built a big mansion on one of the lakes in Rwanda. They don't want that truth to get out. Kagame is going down. It's just a question of when. So as Kagame's crimes become more and more exposed and he becomes more and more a liability to the United States, they start to put more and more pressure on him. For example, somehow Victoire Ingabire, the opposition leader who went from the Hutu, who went from Belgium back to Rwanda, she's in prison, but she's alive. Most people don't survive that journey. They go back to Rwanda, they stand up in public and say anything about the Hutus being the victims of genocide, they're dead. She's alive. Somebody supports her. Somehow Kagame is not able to eliminate her as directly as he'd like. But the oppression against her and the impossibility of covering up the oppression by the Rwandan government becomes more and more significant to the point where Kagame sees that he's on the way out. What is he going to do? He's going to move to people who are going to support him, just like Idi Amin moved to Libya, and Idi Amin started working with the Soviets when he became a problem for the United States and Britain. So Kagame's turned to China. China's supporting Kagame more and more. It feeds itself. The United States claims China's behind the atrocities in the Congo or in Sudan. It never mentions its own involvement, points the finger at China, and at the same time blames Kagame. Kagame's going down. Kagame's playing the game. That's what's going to keep Kagame around, is his connections to China. But China's not any better than the United States in these issues. They're certainly not any worse than the United States. So the idea that the Chinese are any worse than us with respect to Tibet is bullshit. Because you have to understand what happened in Tibet and what happened with the Dalai Lama and the arms and the U.S. support for that. But it's easy to point the finger at the Chinese, just like it's easy to point the finger at the Islamics, just like it's easy the Muslims, just like it's easy to point the finger at the FDLR and say, because we've all been convinced to think this way about these issues. Question? I'm not boring you yet? Gosh, she's got a question, but she doesn't have the microphone. Oh, yes, you do.
I do have a microphone.
I don't hear it working.
I don't know. He gave me this one. I
Hold it up to your mouth a little bit better. Hold it up to your mouth.
Speak into the mic? Okay. I'd emailed you via Sheila about movements on the ground. And what I meant about that is that a long time ago, after World War II, when there were movements of national liberation from the colonial powers, there was enormous feelings of solidarity with these national liberation struggles in Africa. Africa was seen not as just a people in struggle, but a people with a literature, a people with music, a people with a culture. And there was enormous feelings of solidarity. And then, of course, with neo-colonialism, that began to die out in a certain way, but not completely. And from your report, which is so enormously documented, all I heard was about some people in a village. What are the movements that we, as movement people here, could be in solidarity with, or is it not formed yet? The other question, I don't want you to neglect my first question for this. Did you say
Why don't you let me answer one at a time?
Yeah.
I won't neglect your second question, unless I forget you.